It is great news for Hindus and Buddhists in India. In just 2 months, they will be able to trek to Mount Kailash from the Indian territory. Up until now, pilgrims had to travel to Tibet to start their journey.
In 21 days, I was in Kailash, trekked. My muscle mass had gone down, my legs had become like this. Always I've been walking, trekking, playing games, but my muscle mass went down so much in these 8 weeks, I just shrank like…
Weeks ago, a 94-year-old Chinese monk named Chen Huimin did something that could cost him his life. After 6 decades of silence, he finally revealed what is written inside forbidden texts hidden beneath his monastery in Qinghai province. Texts that describe Mount Kailash not as a mountain, but as a machine, an ancient structure deliberately placed on Earth by beings who existed long before humanity. And according to these texts, that machine is still operating. The monks call it the anchor point. They claim it creates a field that bends time, destroys electronics, and pushes anyone who gets too close toward madness. They say climbers who spent 12 hours on its slopes returned aged by decades. Their organs deteriorated, their hair turned white, most died within 2 years. But here's what the monks have never revealed to anyone until now. Something is buried beneath that mountain, something the texts call the seed of the next world. And the mountain is guarding it. The time distortion. Most visceral content. First Master. Chen's hands shook when he explained what the ancient texts say about time around Mount Kailash. His translator had to stop twice because the elderly monk kept pausing, staring toward the door as though expecting someone to enter and silence him. Time does not move there, he finally said. It pools, it speeds up, it takes from you what you can never get back. The monks have understood this for centuries, but the Russians confirmed it in 1999. A scientific expedition led by Dr. Yuri Vulov encountered several Siberian climbers returning from Kailash's slopes. Volkov was an experienced researcher with 20 years in extreme altitude medicine. Nothing unsettled him, but what he witnessed that day made him abandon his expedition and flee the region completely. The climbers had been away for 12 hours. Yet they returned looking like they had aged 20 years. Hair that had been completely black was now filled with gray. Beards had grown weeks beyond what should be physically possible. Fingernails stretched past their fingertips while their faces carried deep lines, sagging skin. The hollow appearance of men who had witnessed something that shattered them. Volkov recorded everything in a private journal that remained unpublished until after his death. He wrote their eyes were the worst. Not afraid, empty, as if they had seen something that erased part of who they were. When we asked how long they had stayed on the mountain, they could not agree. One claimed it had been weeks, another swore it was only hours. They grew agitated, almost violent, when we questioned them. And get this, Vulov ordered medical examinations of those climbers before they left the region. What he discovered challenged everything medical science understands about the human body. Their organs showed deterioration consistent with men in their 80s. Cellular damage that should require decades had occurred in half a day. Blood markers showed extreme biological stress as if their bodies had endured years of aging in one afternoon. Within 2 years, every one of those climbers was dead. Heart failure, organ collapse, conditions that don't occur in healthy men in their 30s. The only thing connecting them was those 12 hours on Mount Kailash during that terrible expedition. The monks weren't shocked when they heard this. According to Master Chen, the ancient texts clearly describe an influence zone extending 15 km from the peak in every direction. Within that boundary, normal rules collapse. Time compresses, bodies age. And something watches to see how much you can withstand before you break. Here's what makes this even more disturbing. Pilgrims have walked circles around Kailash for thousands of years, believing that each circuit removes years of bad karma. They weren't speaking symbolically. The texts describe actual time exchange. Walk the circuit and time shifts. Approach the summit and time accelerates violently. The mountain doesn't simply age you. It takes something you can never define, hours, years, futures that belong to you. And it never asks permission. But time distortion is only one symptom of what's happening at Kailash. The monks say the mountain has been rejecting humans for as long as anyone can remember. And the way it does that is even stranger than accelerated aging. If what you're hearing right now is making the hairs rise on the back of your neck, you're not alone. This is exactly the kind of content we explore every week. Ancient mysteries, forbidden knowledge, things that mainstream science refuses to touch. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss what's coming next. Because what I'm about to tell you about the mountain's psychological defenses makes the time distortion look almost normal. The unclimbable peak. No one has ever reached the summit of Mount Kailash. Not one person. Not throughout recorded history. That's not because people haven't tried, it's because the mountain won't allow them. British mountaineer Hugh Rutland was among the first Westerners to document this. In 1926, he spent 3 weeks studying Kailash from every possible approach. Rutland was a veteran of the most dangerous peaks in the Himalayas, a man who had stared down death on frozen cliffs and continued climbing. Weathered skin, ice-scarred hands, eyes that had watched men fall to their deaths and never flinched. But after 3 weeks observing Kailash, he packed his equipment and declared the mountain completely unclimbable. His expedition notes reveal something strange. Rutland didn't mention ice conditions or technical difficulty. He wrote about a feeling, a pressure that grew in his chest the closer he came, an overwhelming certainty that the mountain was aware of his presence and did not want him there. His guides refused to proceed. 3 of them had nightmares so severe they woke screaming, clawing at their own faces. Rutland himself admitted that leaving felt less like retreat and more like being permitted to escape. The pattern continued for decades. In 2001, a Spanish climbing team secured one of the rarest permits in mountaineering history, official authorization to attempt Kailash's summit. These were elite climbers, Everest veterans, K2 survivors, men who had conquered every technical challenge the Himalayas could throw at them. They never got past base camp. Reports from team members described sudden hallucinations, visions of loved ones dying, of the ground splitting beneath them, of things moving in their peripheral vision that disappeared when they turned to look. Crippling nausea that appeared without warning and vanished just as quickly. And most disturbing, a shared psychological experience they struggled to describe, a certainty deep and absolute that continuing forward would end in something worse than death. Russian climber Sergei Chisakov described his experience in an interview that was later suppressed by local authorities. He was trembling as he spoke, chain-smoking cigarettes, refusing to look directly at the camera. His translator said Chisakov hadn't slept properly in months. I felt altitude sickness. Yes, he said, but this was different. My heart raced for no reason. A thought repeated in my head again and again. You do not belong here. It wasn't my thought. It came from outside, from the mountain. I could feel it pressing against my mind like a hand against my skull. The moment he chose to turn back, every symptom vanished. He said it felt like being released from a grip he hadn't realized was holding him. Relief flooded through him so intensely he cried. The monks confirm what the climbers experienced. The ancient texts describe the mountain's psychological defenses in precise detail. They call it the field of rejection, an energy that doesn't attack intruders but persuades them to leave. It finds the weakness in each person's mind and amplifies it until retreat becomes the only choice. But here's the catch. The texts also warn that the mountain's defenses extend beyond psychology. The closer you get, the more reality itself begins to break down. And the first thing to fail is always technology. The machine failures, compasses go insane. Near Mount Kailash, needles spin endlessly without settling or freeze in place, refusing to respond. In a landscape where landmarks repeat and weather changes without warning, losing your compass isn't an inconvenience, it's a death sentence. Trekkers have documented this phenomenon for decades. One German expedition in 2015 carried 6 compasses from 3 different manufacturers. All 6 failed simultaneously within 8 km of the peak. The expedition leader, a former military navigator, described watching the needles spin in perfect synchronization, as if reacting to the same invisible signal. Higher above the mountain, pilots have reported phenomena that nobody can explain. Aircraft are prohibited from flying directly over the peak, officially classified as restricted airspace. But the real reason isn't found in any government document. Pilots who've flown near the region describe instruments giving contradictory readings simultaneously, altimeters displaying impossible numbers, heading indicators spinning backward, sudden complete signal loss that lasted exactly as long as they were closest to the peak, turbulence appearing out of nowhere in perfectly clear conditions. Not the gradual buildup pilots expect, but instant violent shaking that stopped as suddenly as it began. Modern aircraft depend on redundant systems specifically designed to prevent multiple simultaneous failures. Near Kailash, those systems fail anyway. One commercial pilot who requested anonymity said he's flown that route dozens of times. Every single flight, he said, something goes wrong that shouldn't be possible. My co-pilot and I don't discuss it. Neither does anyone else. But we all know. Drones add another layer of evidence. Documentary crews have attempted to fly unmanned vehicles near the slopes, hoping to capture footage of the summit that no human has ever seen. Most never got far. Some lost signal and dropped straight from the sky like stones. Others returned corrupted footage, images that looked damaged, distorted, as if something had interfered with the data itself. Faces appeared in static. Shapes that shouldn't exist flickered across frames. Engineers examined these devices afterward and found no physical damage, no explanation for the failures. The machines simply stopped working within range of the mountain, then worked normally once removed from the area. One technician reportedly refused to examine any more cache equipment after the third drone. He quit his job a week later. Master Chen nodded when we described these accounts. The texts predicted this. He said the anchor point creates a field that rejects anything artificial. The closer you get, the stronger the rejection becomes. Your machines are not welcome there. Neither are you. And get this. The monks say the technology failures aren't accidental. They're targeted. The mountain somehow identifies what humans depend on to feel in control and systematically disables it. First, navigation, then communication, then the devices themselves. By the time climbers understand what's happening, they're already disoriented, isolated, and fighting the instinct to run. But the monks revealed something about cache that goes beyond defense mechanisms, something that suggests the mountain isn't simply protecting itself. It's watching, and it has eyes. The twin lakes, two lakes, sit at the base of Mount Kailash, divided by a narrow strip of land. They couldn't be more different. Lake Manasarovar is perfectly still, fresh water, mirror smooth even when winds howl across the plateau. At extreme altitude, when every other body of water freezes solid, Manasar refuses to freeze. Its surface stays calm, reflective, almost unnaturally serene. Beside it lies rock Shastal, saline, restless, its water constantly churning as if something beneath the surface refuses to become still. Travelers who stand between the two lakes describe sensing a boundary they can't see, a threshold between opposing forces. Master Chen's voice dropped when he talked about the lakes. He glanced at his fellow monks before continuing, as if checking whether he should reveal what came next. The texts call them the mountain's eyes, he said quietly. Manasarovar watches the sky. Rakshastal watches what lies below. Together they form a surveillance system that has operated for millennia. Nothing approaches Kailash without being observed. Nothing, at night, Manasarovar becomes stranger. Witnesses describe tiny points of light crossing the surface, not reflections of stars, but independent sources moving in patterns that suggest purpose. The water changes color from day to day, shifting through blues, greens, and occasional crimson shades that have no geological explanation. The land around the lakes changes in ways that defy mapping. Pilgrims walking the ritual circuit speak of trails that disappear and reappear between footsteps, rocks that stand firm 1 hour and vanish the next. The terrain shows no collapse, no erosion, just a quiet refusal to remain consistent, as if reality itself becomes unstable this close to the mountain. Photographs taken at the lakes rarely match what witnesses remember seeing. Sounds travel strangely, arriving late, distorted, or not at all. Even silence feels layered. Echoes that never completely fade. The monks say this is deliberate. The lakes don't simply observe, they distort perception, testing whether visitors can be trusted with what lies beyond. Most fail without realizing they were being tested. Basically, if the time distortion is the mountain's weapon and the psychological pressure is its shield, the lakes are its intelligence network. And all of it, every defense, every phenomenon, exists to protect what the monks say is hidden at the heart of Kailash. Something that finally explains why this mountain matters more than any other place on Earth. The impossible geometry. From a distance, Mount Kailash doesn't appear natural. Unlike every other Himalayan peak shaped by violent tectonic forces carved asymmetrically by glaciers, Kailash rises with almost perfect symmetry. 4 steep faces descend toward the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. The edges are clean, measured, the kind of geometric precision that shouldn't exist in nature. Master Chen spread a map across the monastery floor and began drawing lines. His hands moved quickly, connecting points he seemed to know by heart. The anchor point wasn't placed randomly. He said, "Watch." He drew a line from Kailash to the Great Pyramid of Giza, extended it further. It passed directly through Stonehenge. Another line connected Kailash to Easter Island. A third ran to Angkor Wat. A fourth to the ancient city of Petra. The probability of these alignments occurring by chance, Master Chen said, has been calculated at less than 1 in 10 million. The builders understood Earth's energy grid. They placed monuments at intersection points. And Kailash was the central hub, the control point, the machine that makes all the other sites function. The Great Pyramid stands 146 m tall. Kailash rises over 6,600 m above sea level. If the mountain is artificial, and the monks insist the texts confirm this, it represents construction on a scale that dwarfs anything in human history. Technology that could move and shape matter in ways we still cannot comprehend. Geologists offer alternative explanations. Glaciers can carve pyramidal peaks. Sediment can fracture along straight lines. Symmetry can occur naturally. But here's the deal. Even those explanations acknowledge how extraordinarily rare Kailash's form is. The combination of perfect symmetry, precise cardinal orientation, and preservation over millennia places this mountain in a category almost by itself. It's not the only geometric peak in the world. It's one of the only ones that appears deliberately constructed from every single angle. The monks don't hedge. They state it directly. Kailash was built. The ancient texts use a term that translates to the shape stone, implying deliberate design rather than geological accident. And everything strange about the mountain, the time distortion, the psychological defenses, the technology failures, the watching lakes, exists because the structure is still active, still functioning, still protecting whatever was placed inside it thousands of years ago. The Hall of Records. Master Chen saved the most disturbing revelation for last. The monastery had grown silent. The other monks had left the room one by one, as if they knew what was coming and wanted nothing to do with it. Through the window, clouds gathered over distant peaks. A wind had risen outside, rattling the ancient wooden shutters. When Master Chen spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "The texts speak of a chamber," he said. "Deep beneath the mountain, not a tomb, not a treasure vault, something completely different." He called it the Hall of Records. According to the ancient texts, this chamber holds knowledge that predates human civilization by tens of thousands of years. Documentation of where we came from. Not evolution, not creation myths, but actual records of human origins that contradict everything we've been taught. Information about what we truly are, about abilities and histories that have been deliberately erased, and most disturbing of all, detailed descriptions of what is coming. Events the texts call the turning that will transform human existence completely. The texts call it the seed of the next world. Master Chen said, "I do not fully understand what that means, but the texts make clear that this knowledge is not meant for humanity. Yet the mountain's purpose, every defense, every phenomenon, every death, exists to ensure the Hall of Record stays sealed until the proper time." We ask the obvious question, when would that time come? How would humanity know it was ready? Master Chen's expression changed. For the first time, something that might have been fear crossed his face. His hands tightened around the edge of the table. "We won't decide," he said quietly. "The mountain will decide. It always has." For 4 major religions, Mount Kailash represents the center of the universe. Hindus believe Shiva sits in eternal meditation at its summit. Buddhists see it as the mandala of ultimate enlightenment. Jains hold it as the site of their first teacher's liberation. The Bon religion considers it the seat of all spiritual power. Different faiths, different interpretations, but all agree on one point. This place anchors something greater than itself. 4 major rivers of Asia originate from the region surrounding Kals, the Indus, the Sutlej, the Brahmaputra, the Karnali. 4 rivers flowing in 4 directions, sustaining nearly half of humanity. The monks say this is no coincidence. The mountain was placed at the source point deliberately, feeding life across the planet while protecting secrets that could end it. Everything connects. The time distortions that age climbers by decades. The psychological pressure that transforms hardened mountaineers into trembling wrecks. The technology failures that strip away every tool humans depend on. The twin lakes watching everything that approaches. The impossible geometry that mathematicians say cannot occur naturally. And beneath it all, a chamber containing knowledge about human origins and human destiny that we are not yet permitted to access. Mount Kailash has stood unmoved for millennia, while governments restrict access. Climbers flee in terror, and scientists record phenomena they cannot explain. Now, monks who have protected these secrets for over 1,000 years have finally broken their silence. They confirm the mountain is not natural. They confirm it's still active, and they confirm something is buried beneath it that will change everything we understand about who we are and where we're headed. The question isn't whether you believe them. The question is, what happens when the mountain decides humanity is finally ready? Drop your answer in the comments right now. And if this video kept you watching until the end, smash that like button and subscribe immediately. We're going deeper into forbidden knowledge that mainstream sources refuse to touch.